I am so excited for today's episode. I think I say that every time, but every time I really, really mean it because I have chosen some really amazing women that I want to talk to. And I should say humans because at some point there could be men here. But today I have Barb Hubbard. She is a time management coach and ADHD specialist. She loves supporting ambitious individuals who have big goals. Barb started her career as an elementary level special education teacher. After many years of teaching children and supporting parents, she began to notice that distractibility, forgetfulness, and disorganization weren't limited to the classroom. With a desire to help adults achieve their dreams, Barb launched her coaching business in 2018. With love and compassion, she helps her clients move towards their goals by breaking them into organized and manageable steps and guiding them to the finish line. Barb helps dreamers discover clarity, find their focus, and feel motivated to work on the big and scary projects on their to-do list. Welcome, Barb.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey of how you got to where you are today.
Sure, yeah. So as you shared in my bio, I was an elementary special education teacher. I did that for 20 years. So I was in that role for a long time, and I worked with mostly kids in second, third, fourth grade who had learning disabilities, ADHD, autism. I also worked closely with parents, as you do as an elementary school teacher.
Sure.
And I got to a point in about 2013, 2014, where I had to make a decision. Do I continue teaching for 10, 15 more years, or do I jump ship and try something else? And the reality was that I was completely stressed out. I had quite a few health conditions going on that were related to stress. And I opted to jump ship. And I was looking for something that really could relate to what I had been doing. I still love teaching. I am a coach, but much of what I do is teach.
Sure.
It's you can't take the teacher out of me.
Right, right.
So, and ADHD just fit. There's the ADHD in my family. I had been around these kids, these parents, and then I had women coming to me saying, well, I don't know if I have ADHD, but I can't focus. I'm totally distracted. I don't know how to break down this project. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I have no motivation, right? I still
Yeah.
hear that all the time. And so I kind of, combine both worlds. I talk to people who suspect they might have ADHD, to people who do have that diagnosis and want to understand how it impacts them and what to do about it. But I also talk to a lot of people who don't have ADHD or don't care, right? They don't,
Yeah.
like, if I do, that's fine with me, whatever. I don't need to pursue that. Talk to a lot of those people as well and help them take their next steps as well.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about ADHD because I feel like it's such a buzzword now. Everybody
Yeah,
has
yeah,
ADHD,
yeah.
right? So how can someone self-diagnose if that's even a
Mhm,
thing, right? Because
mhm,
there are so many women, men and women, I think, but I
mhm.
know it looks different in women than it does in men.
Okay.
So, and do you just work with women or do you work with both?
I work with both.
Okay,
I would say 95% of my clients are women,
sure.
but I do have men that I work with
So
too.
let's break it down. So how does it look
Mhm.
different in women? Let's just start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, and let me start by saying not everybody has ADHD. I know
Yeah,
that that's right. Like, I don't think you actually believe that, but I want to put
right.
that out there, right?
Right. Well, feel like it's such a buzzword.
It
Everyone's
is.
saying it now, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I share that because, for the people who do have ADHD, their life is impacted in a severe way. And I never want to minimize what they're going through, right?
My husband has, so let's just be, my husband has
Yes.
ADHD. So
So,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Yes.
So, so for women, and I'll back up and say for girls too,
Mm-hmm.
it does tend to look different. And for what people think of with ADHD is little boys bouncing off the wall,
Yeah.
right? And because those little boys were bouncing off the wall, they get diagnosed more easily because their teachers, and I'm fall into this bucket, right? Their teachers are like, oh, I need help for him. I
Right.
can't control him. He's disrupting the class, right? Meanwhile, these little girls are, forgetful. They're spacey, but they're really well behaved, usually. And they're sitting there not causing a fuss. And so they get overlooked.
Mm.
Fast forward to when those little girls are young women, right? Or in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Most
Yeah.
of my clients are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they're well, all my life, I've struggled with relationships. I've struggled emotionally. I've struggled with, keep holding down a job because I don't show up on time or because I forget to turn the report in on time. Um, these women are experiencing that. And so what has happened, it's not that there are more women out there who have ADHD. I really don't believe that. What I think is happening is all the little girls who were overlooked are suddenly hearing from various sources, right, about ADHD, and they're going, oh my goodness, that's me too. And then the next step, what do I do about it?
Right. So my husband has he doesn't have the H part, he has the
Okay.
ADD part,
So
right? So
yeah, yeah.
does not have the
Mm-hmm.
hyper, but
Yeah.
he was diagnosed just from our primary based on conversations, right? He didn't go through extensive, but
Sure.
he had to take a test for his
Mm-hmm.
profession.
Okay.
And he failed it. He failed part of it like 2 or 3 times. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it was he couldn't sit to study.
Yeah.
Like watching him study was
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after failing it for, I forget, 2 or 3 times, he talked to our doctor and she, whatever conversation they had, he went on ADD medication.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in watching him then study was, I mean, he could sit for hours and actually
Yeah,
study.
that.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating. And
Yeah.
he was on the meds for years and then went off him for a period of time. And last year he had a lot going on in work and it was overwhelming. And between that, and I said to him, I think it's time to think about going back on it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a
Yeah.
tool. It's like if you have diabetes, right?
Exactly.
You're going to
Right.
take it. And
Yeah.
his quality of life, I should also say my
Yeah.
quality of life
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so much different. Now,
Yeah.
that being said, right, I see all the things on Facebook, right? I'm like, I have
Mm-hmm.
that, I have that, I have that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference
Mm-hmm.
between I'm just a really busy woman with a lot of shit on her plate
Yeah. Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
somebody who really can't function,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, a
Because his is
great
more parallel,
question,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a continuum, right? And I think there's a lot of us in the middle. And I will share that my youngest child was diagnosed with ADHD in elementary school.
Yeah.
My husband probably has it. We all say he has it, right?
Yeah.
Never had an official diagnosis.
Right.
So I've been surrounded by it my whole, since I was in my 20s. And so after becoming certified as an ADHD coach and learning about it and working, I suddenly was like, oh my goodness, me too. Like I'm like, me too. Like what? That client is me. Like I'm
Right.
listening to my clients. And so I too have been through this. And I will say, yep, I probably have ADHD. So here's the difference. I think there are some people who very naturally um, adopt accommodations for themselves. They figure out strategies that work, and they may or may not have ADHD, right? I
Right.
fall into that bucket. But then there are people who, no matter what they try, they cannot sit down to study, right? They cannot show up on time. They cannot keep a relationship going, right?
Mm.
Because of their ADHD. And that's when I say, all right, you need more support. You need to pursue this diagnosis, right? So I think it's really a continuum. There
Yeah.
are many of us out there who are like, yep, probably,
Right.
right? But I wouldn't say it's impacting my life in a serious way.
Right. And I'm curious, how much of um the social media, the stuff that's coming at us isn't what's causing the lack of focus, the lack of,
Oh, sure.
right? Like,
Okay. Yeah.
would you say that in the last, call it 10 or 15 years, that it has intensified even more?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I do believe that social media, I don't want to just pin it on social media, just life in general,
Right.
the ability to work from anywhere at any time. We have smartphones that we can be reached anywhere at any time, right? So it's not just social media, but kind of technology in general and the way society has evolved. We never turn off. We
Right.
never turn off. And I do think that that causes us, I have read, different theories. I don't think they're proven, but different theories that suggest that our brains have evolved with that, right? With the
Mm.
changes in society. And so, the fact that we never turn off, we're always available. Our brains are always going and our brains have evolved. And so because of all that, yeah, we are more distracted, right? We
Right.
just are. We are, our brains are not used to being bored. They don't know how to be bored anymore. They're always going.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a huge problem. So, and that is probably why I end up working with a lot of people who are like, well, it might not be ADHD, but like I still
Right.
can't focus,
Focus,
right?
right.
You
And
know,
I'm curious, I had this conversation with my primary about a year or so ago where I said, I'm really struggling focusing. And she said, honestly, I noticed more and more women in menopause
yes,
that, are
yeah,
being I don't know if she
yeah,
said diagnosed as
yeah,
ADHD or that
but
was just my interpretation, but
yeah, yeah.
the menopause, so to add that in,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
just gonna,
And there are studies around
yeah,
that, recent, very significant studies that show that not only do women experience, a lack of focus and forgetfulness and things when they hit menopause, but it actually has happened throughout their cycle, throughout their life. So during the month when the estrogen dips, that week or so of
mhm,
the month, you are more forgetful, you are less focused, you're more distracted, right? All of those things, more emotional. Like we all know women are more emotional for
so
that,
needless to say, if you're in menopause, the
yeah,
estrogen's
yeah.
pretty much plummeted, right?
Exactly. So when they hit
Yeah,
perimenopause, even when the
right,
estrogen's all over the place and not regular anymore, that's when women are like, what is going on with me? Right? That's where I'm at right now. Like, what is happening to me? I'm losing my mind, right? But
right.
yes, so there are significant important studies that show that yes, that is absolutely a factor
Interesting.
for women.
And I'm curious, and I don't know if there's a study, but I feel like this is, men are definitely more single focused in what they do, right?
Yeah,
And women can do, I hate the term multitasking because we cannot do more than one thing at a
right,
time, but
right,
we call it multitasking, right?
right.
We can juggle a lot of different
Hmm.
things, right?
Agreed.
So does that then is that part of the reason maybe that it goes more undiagnosed in women because we are just used to doing multiple
Yeah,
things and
yeah.
maybe faking the fact that we're struggling doing it?
Yes, all of that, right? Like
Yeah.
I do agree. I think, there's the side of it where women do more, right? But it's very much a societal expectation,
One
right?
kind, 100%.
You
Yeah.
know, and so because society expects us to do more and expects us to manage all these different things at the same time, right? Women are expected, and then, you know, they can't keep up, right? And then women tend to internalize it, right? And say, well, there must be something wrong with me, instead of maybe I could benefit from some support, right? There's a lot
Right.
of like, well, I shouldn't need support. I'm
Well, and
supposed to
then
be able to do
asking for it,
this.
that's a whole other thing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I taught a workshop last year on gratitude through receiving. And I was like, all right, so
Yeah,
how many women here ask for their needs to be met? And I don't know that anybody raised their hand,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because we're
yeah.
just trained that we're the caregivers,
Yep,
so we don't get to ask. And so often
yeah,
when I'm working with my clients, and I'm sure you see it with yours, you know, like teaching them vulnerability and teaching them to ask for what they
yeah,
need,
yeah.
it's like they look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language to
Right.
them.
Right. You know, and to share a funny story just now. So, my kids are away doing their thing now. They're both grown out of the house for the most part. My husband happens to be out of town for work this week. So I am home alone with the dog, right?
Woohoo!
I apologize to the dog for locking him out of my office to record this,
Oh my gosh.
right? Like, and then I went like, first off, I'm talking to myself basically, and I say I'm talking to the dog, but you know,
Right.
and right, like, wait a minute, I have every right, and you know, I'm asking the dog for permission to
Permission.
please forgive me for closing my office doors today. I
Yeah.
mean, right? Like if we do that with the dog, of course we're going to do that with our family, with our friends, with everybody
Yeah.
else, right?
I had a former coach that I think this was probably 15 years ago. She was on a radio interview, you know, pre-podcast. And she talked about how women apologize so much. Like you walk
Yes.
into somebody's office and
Yeah.
you say, "Hey Barb, I'm sorry to bother you, but,"
Hmm.
right? We apologize
We
just for
do.
existing. I
Yes.
got really, and even just when I would send an email, I just want to ask you blah, 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 blah. Like we're always just
Yeah.
justing
Yeah.
ourselves and
Even if we don't use the
apologizing.
word apologize or I'm sorry, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We're
it
still,
really, when
yeah.
she said that, when
Yeah.
I heard that, I started becoming so aware. Like you were aware that you did
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
you change doesn't happen until you have the awareness. But
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
really, that was such a powerful lesson for me because I thought, wow, I'm not going to walk into somebody's office and say, I'm sorry, just, hey, Barb, do you have time to talk?
Right.
And you
Yeah.
get to say yes or no. That's
Exactly.
yours, not mine, right?
Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
help? So let's talk about how do you support and help your clients? So
Sure.
talk me through like the process that you work with your clients on.
So I offer so many different things. I think that's partly, you know, my brain likes to do lots of different things at the same time, right?
Sure.
So to start, I offer a lot of free stuff, right? Like I want people to jump in wherever they're at. And if that is just listening to the podcasts I'm doing or listening to you know, videos on Instagram or reading my blogs, right? Like you can pick up a lot of great stuff. And I love to offer that, right? That's
Nice.
the teacher in me, right?
And we'll have all your
So,
information
oh,
in the
perfect.
show notes.
Yeah, awesome. The next kind of level of how I support people, I have a community. It's called How to Eat an Elephant. It is a paid membership community. When I was little, I would, oh, even now, but when I was little, I would get overwhelmed very easily. And my dad would say, hold up, pause. How to eat an elephant, one bite at a time,
Yeah.
right? And so that became the name of my community. And we do just that, right? I support people and breaking down those projects, eating one bite at a time, continuing to make consistent progress.
Nice.
So that's you know another level. And then I support people one-on-one. That's the other level of what I do, right? For the people who are ready for change, are ready to put in the work, um, because you can learn all the strategies and you know, by watching the videos and reading the book and all the stuff, right? But until you start being aware of your mindset, like you mentioned it, right? Being
Yeah.
aware that you're apologizing all the time, right?
Right. Change only happens when we're aware, when we have
Right?
awareness.
Yeah. So the one-on-one support is for the people who are ready to explore that, right? And really jumping into their mindset work. And it's not, you know, I do a lot of teaching in my coaching as well. That I
Yeah.
really it's hard for me to separate that. So I do teach strategies to my one-on-one clients, but I would say that, you know, more than half of the work that my one-on-one clients do is helping them be aware, make adjustments, really delve into that mindset. And just not right now, I'm working towards becoming an EFT tapping practitioner, and I'm going to be
Ooh,
adding that
yes. Yep.
into my one-on-one work as well.
That will I mean, I became a EFT practitioner last
Yes,
year, and it really has just shifted so
yeah,
much of
yeah,
how I work with my clients
yeah.
because, I do mindset work and I
Mhm.
help women make big ass up levels in their business. And oftentimes when you're on that precipice of the change,
Yeah,
all the old shit that's in there, that's in your subconscious is what's stopping you. It's not about
yeah,
the thing, it's about
right.
the stories that you've been telling yourself for
Yeah,
so many years,
yeah,
right?
100% agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's talk a little bit about accountability. And,
yeah.
we talked about this before we started recording. But Barb and I are both coaches. We work with clients in different ways, but still supporting our clients through change. And, one of the biggest struggles is I feel it's people are afraid to take, right? When you are going back to the receiving piece, right? When you have to say,
Mhm.
yes, I'm ready to do this, you're actually putting yourself before everyone else
Yep,
with both financial and time.
yeah.
I often say most women that I work with, right? If their child needed something that was going to cost X number of dollars, they wouldn't hesitate. But if they needed it, they're
Mhm.
going to have all the excuses.
Yeah,
So I would imagine you have similar,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
how do you support your clients in really allowing and really
yeah,
embracing that they're worthy and deserving of it?
yeah. Great question. You know, everything you said is so true, right? Women are generally put themselves last. And, you know, I think one of the hardest things that I encounter is people telling me, well, I shouldn't put myself first. I shouldn't need accountability, right? I definitely shouldn't have to pay for accountability, right? I should be
Right.
able to do it
I
myself.
should be able to do.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah. All
finished
those
another.
shoulds.
I just finished another recording, podcast recording, and we talked about clients that should themselves, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
shoulds and the needs,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And I think the first piece that is needed towards change in that is the awareness. So I think,
100%.
you know, with one-on-one coaching and even within my How to Eat an Elephant community, I'm always pointing that out. Do you hear yourself? Like, do
Right,
you know how many times you just said should in the
right,
last minute, right? So it's awareness. And then it's often asking the question, why? Why not? Right?
right,
If you know that you will get the project done if I'm going to check in with you, why not allow that for yourself? Right? But like you said, it's about receiving. And
right.
people have trouble with that. So that's partly why I'm adding in the tapping is that
Yeah,
we need to get to the root of why you believe that, because it's about receiving, it's about your worth, right? And, you know, I think that again, it's a combination. Here are the strategies to try, but we also need to address why you
what's
feel like
underneath
you
it?
don't deserve this,
Yeah.
right?
No, I love that.
Yeah,
Um, let's talk a little bit about the strategies. So What are some strategies, if you were to just offer like your top, whatever, one or two, like for time management, whether you have ADD, ADHD or not,
Right.
what
Yeah.
would you say are the top strategies that you would start somebody off with?
Yeah. Accountability is number one. Accountability. I follow Gretchen Rubin. She's an author and podcaster. She wrote a book called The Four Tendencies, did some research and offered up this framework. It's a personality framework. And basically what she found was that something like 35% of people need accountability. Not just like it would be nice. They need it to get
I'm
things
surprised
done.
the number's that low.
And it could be even higher, right?
Yeah,
But there are people out there who are like, I am going to write a book this year, and they sit
right. And
down
they do
and
it.
do it,
Yep.
right? Like they're probably not listening to us.
But
Right?
you know
Those
what?
aren't
I
our
would be
people.
curious if they had balance in their life, right? Like, are they also the same
Yes,
people
yeah,
that,
yeah,
don't know what their partner's doing, haven't paid
yes,
attention to the kids, and haven't had
right,
fun,
right,
right? Like,
right,
are they
right,
just
right.
like, there
Yeah,
are people that get
yeah.
that hyper focus, I'm going to do this, and
Yes,
everything
yes.
else gets
True,
pushed aside,
true,
right?
right. Yeah. But yeah, Gretchen Rubin suggests that 35%, right, of us need accountability. And I found that to be true for myself. It is how I have built my business. It is how I wrote a book, right? It's
Right.
why I'm where I am at today. It's because I set up accountability for myself. And what I discovered along the way was number one, it's okay. Like, I don't need to be ashamed that I need accountability. But number two, there's lots of ways to set it up where you're not bothering the other person, right? Or there may not even be another person, right? Like I schedule first a lot. That's a form of accountability. I have a workshop tomorrow. It's scheduled. Therefore, I will get ready for it.
Right.
Right? Like I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be ready to deliver that workshop. Right? So there's ways to create accountability for yourself that feel a little easier. But that's the number one strategy that I work with people on. One is accepting that, yep, this is what I need and it's okay. And number two, here's how to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
yeah,
And
that's a big one.
as a coach, I feel like as coaches, we also need to have accountability, right? Like I often
Yeah.
say, if your coach doesn't have a coach, like question that, right? Or,
Yes.
right, I
Yeah.
have a coach, I have a mastermind group, I have, right? Like I like to have different perspectives too. And for my mastermind, we meet on Mondays. And I hadn't done my thing for a while, but it got me doing it over the weekend because I knew on
Yeah.
Monday I had to say,
Exactly.
hey, this is what I did, right?
Yeah. You
So
set
there's a
up
level.
accountability for yourself.
Right.
Boom.
And
Yeah.
it has to be without shame. So if I didn't get it
Yes.
done, right?
Yes.
So there's a
Yes.
difference
Yes. Yes.
because
There
I've
is.
worked with some coaches
Yeah.
that, right, like are
Yeah.
shaming you for not
Yeah.
getting it done.
Yeah.
I just get
Hmm.
curious. Okay, so
Yeah.
you said you wanted to do this thing and you
Yeah.
didn't. So let's dig
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
a client that I've been working with her for a while, but when she first came to me, she said, I need to find a new job, and this is the type of job I want, and I need to find it in the next couple of months. I was like, okay. Well, week
Mhm.
after week, she said wasn't sending out a resume, wasn't looking, wasn't doing the things that
Right.
she said. And then after, I don't know, the however many sessions we had, I said, so let's just take a step back. Do you actually want to be an HR person? And she was like, nope.
No.
Like, okay, well, what do you want? And she's
Right.
super creative, but in her
Mhm.
mind, she needed to make a certain dollar amount, and that's how she could do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we took a step back and said, well, what do you want? She's a very creative person. And once she
Of
started looking at that, she had a job within weeks.
course she did.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and shame on me that it took me a month or whatever it was, a few
Yeah.
sessions,
Yeah.
because sometimes it is just the client. I was like, okay. And
Mhm.
then when I got curious,
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
just was,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't actually want to do that. Okay, great. Let's push that aside.
Well, and I think that that is the other tip that I offer up all the time is you have to do what works for you. And that comes in a lot
Yes.
of different ways, right? You have to do what's fun for you, it's going to be a lot. And I shouldn't say you have to, but it's going to be so much easier if you do what's
Right.
fun for you, if you use your strengths, right? And a lot of people don't know what's fun for them. They don't know what their strengths are. So, we got to uncover that.
Well, and I think it's the path of least resistance, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
for those of you listening, I just recorded 2 podcasts back to back. So Barb is the second one, but I just had this conversation in the last recording where, for years, I wasn't sending out a consistent newsletter. It made
Mhm.
me want to poke my eyes out
Mhm.
because the thought of having to come up with a topic every week wasn't fun to me.
Mhm.
When I started the podcast in July, I have sent out a newsletter every week because it is around the podcast. And
And
this
it's
is fun for
fun.
me. My top
It's
values are
fun.
fun and
Yes,
connections. So the
yes.
podcast is fun for me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's
I love
finding,
that. I love
yeah,
that. It's discovering, what's fun for you. But it also, to your point, it was about being curious and saying, like, why am I sitting down and forcing myself to write something that
right,
I don't want to do, right? Like, but being curious about it
right.
instead of beating ourselves up about it and saying, all right, well, what do I need to shift? What do I
Right.
need to adjust?
It was so much easier when I was inspired to write than
Yeah.
forced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I know that you say every brain is different and therefore you need different strategies, but I'm curious what comes up for me when I hear that is there's so much comparisonitis out there.
Mhm.
Well, if Barb can do it, why shouldn't I be able to do it?
Mhm.
Right? If Francine can
Mhm.
do it, why can't I do it? So
Yeah.
how do you then separate that and allow your clients to not feel shame and comparing themselves to
Mhm.
everyone else
Mhm.
because they're have to do it differently?
Sure. I think one of the phrases I use often is curiosity over judgment. And I
Yeah.
would say that I model that for everybody around me, right? I think I probably say at least once a day, you don't have to do it like I do it. Let's
Right.
figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
But it's, we are quick to judge ourselves. We have a very harsh, critical voice in our heads.
Right.
And
I
when
say
I
all the
say
time,
we,
the brain lies to our head, lies to us 100%
yes,
of the time,
yeah, we
right?
have a lot of stories we tell
Yeah.
ourselves in there, and some of them, we can dig deeper and uncover that and be aware of that. But we just need to be aware that, we don't have to listen to everything our brain likes to tell us.
Right.
But be curious instead of judging. When you feel yourself judging yourself or comparing yourself to others, be curious. What is it about this other person that I would like to emulate, right? What is it about this other person that, has me feeling jealous?
Mm,
And what can I change or do I want to change, right?
right.
Or sometimes I realize I don't want to be like them. Like, right? Like, not
Right.
really. I'm inspired by them, but I don't want to be like, I don't want to, whatever, work that many hours or have
Well,
that part, right?
and I think when we're seeing, I think social media, there's so many pros of social media and so many cons, right?
Mhm.
Like I think it's a balance. And what we see on social is what we're meant to see,
Yes,
right?
yes,
I had a
100%.
conversation once with a former coach of mine, and I said, I wish I could be like so and so, right? Like she's
Yeah.
doing all these things. And she said, I know so and so, and I've seen behind the curtain. What you're seeing on social
Right?
isn't real. And it took me a minute, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm comparing myself to somebody I don't even know.
Ah,
It's
yeah.
what she wants me to see.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's when we have to take a step and go, all right, well, what works for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What's going to work for me? And I am, I'm really big on uncovering the unique strategies that work for your brain,
Yeah.
right? What works for you is not going to work for me. But that
Right.
comparison is the thief of joy, right? There's that quote, and I believe it, right? As soon
Yeah.
as you start comparing, it 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 really is important to stop and be curious and say, okay, why? What's going on here? Why am I comparing? What am I jealous about? And what's really the truth here? right?
Right.
Maybe it's that that's not the truth, what I'm seeing from them.
I started having a conversation with a friend recently about reality, like what is real.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything is real, right?
Right? It's
So,
all
because
our perception.
exactly, right? So a few weeks ago, we use I don't know if you use Marco Polo. It's like a video
Mhm.
texting chat, right? So we use Marco Polo. And one day I was like, I just need a few days of not having this I'm like, it hurts. Like nothing's real, right? If it's all our own
Yeah,
stories and your story is different than mine,
yeah.
and everybody has all these different stories, like, is anything real?
It's all our perception,
Right.
right? I mean, yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole there.
Right. And I
Yeah.
did. For a while, I went down this rabbit hole and I was like, I need
Yeah,
to stop. I was like, this is too
yeah,
much. I need to stop for a
yeah,
while.
yeah.
What are some tips if you're a procrastinator, right? So you have these
Mm,
big lofty dreams, but you keep spinning in the hamster wheel.
yeah,
How do you help your clients like just take one step towards their dreams so they're not putting them off
yeah.
anymore?
So many tips I could give around procrastination. I think the first is just take one bite, right? One bite at a time. But the other is you don't have to stop procrastinating. You can live a procrastinator's life and be very successful.
Yeah.
And I know this firsthand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, check.
I think so many people are trying to stop procrastinating.
Right.
They're so focused on stopping and avoiding it that they haven't allowed themselves to look at the fact that maybe sometimes it's okay. And I don't mean like it's okay to keep putting off that dream, right? Like keep delaying, keep delaying. I don't mean it in that way, but it is okay to say, all right, I am going to procrastinate until I feel urgency, right? I'm going to procrastinate until I do feel like I have clarity, right? There's different
Right.
ways to look
Yeah.
at it, but you know, the clarity often comes from action. So sometimes you just gotta start,
Take an
right?
action.
You just gotta
Yeah.
take an action. And often for me, it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes of action. And then I go, oh, now I know where to go next. So that helps me stop procrastinating,
Yeah.
right? But I don't fight it anymore. If I'm procrastinating, there's a reason behind it.
Right.
Kind of
Well, and I
wasted.
think also one of the things I bring my clients through is a process of how to do more by being more, right? Understanding who
Yes.
you be. So my top values are
Mhm.
fun, enthusiasm, and connection.
Mhm.
If the task I'm doing doesn't involve those three things,
Yeah.
it's going to be painful for me to do.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
effortless for me to do a podcast recording.
Right.
Effortless.
Right.
Wish I could
Yeah.
do it all day long. But to
Yeah.
sit down and create a program or do my social media posts or
Yeah.
anything that I'm not connected with someone else and it's just me,
Mhm.
it's harder. It doesn't mean I
Yeah.
can't get it done, but it takes a lot more of my energy and effort.
Exactly.
And I
And
think let me finish the thought because I'll
yeah.
forget. Because I think letting go of the shoulds, even
Mhm.
like blocking my calendar off, putting a
Yeah.
block of time to do a task
Yeah.
never worked for me. It didn't work for me when I was in corporate. It doesn't work for me when I'm on my
Yeah.
own.
Right.
I will get
Right.
it done,
Yeah.
but it's learning. I had to give that up and be okay
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you just shared the perfect story around, so many of the things we've been talking about,
Yeah.
right? You were looking at it with curiosity. Why am I procrastinating? Right. Well, it's because it's not fun, it's not creative, it's not
Yep.
connected, right, with other
Right.
people, right? Like when you look at it with curiosity and ask yourself, why am I procrastinating on this? Then you can uncover the next steps, right?
Right.
And sometimes the next step is, I shouldn't be doing this. I need to hand it off to someone else,
Yeah.
or, this task, this whatever isn't for me, right? I need to do something completely different and I
Yeah.
need to give it up completely. But procrastination, we're all going to procrastinate on some things. Usually it's okay, but
Right.
we need to look at that with
And just don't
curiosity as
beat
well.
yourself up and
Yeah.
for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is something that you live by that you want to share with the listeners?
Oh, something I live by. I think it's, being authentically me. And I won't say that I've lived by that my whole
Sure.
life, right? Like that is a more recent
Yeah.
thing that I've lived by. But I show up as me. We talked beforehand. I know that like my glasses have a glare from my ring light,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, well,
It
today
is
was the
what it
day I
is.
needed to wear my glasses. I am authentically me, and I'm not gonna apologize for that,
Right.
right? That I couldn't put my contacts in today. All right, right. I really I have learned in the last few years to embrace that more and more and more. I just show up as me, and I I love it. I am more comfortable in my own skin. I am able to avoid the shoulds
Right.
more often. And I love to model that for other people. It's okay to be you. Please be you. Yeah, I don't
Right.
want not you. I want to know you. Yeah.
How would you encourage, like, if somebody's listening to this and going, what the hell is she talking about?
Right. I
This is all
know.
foreign to me. Um,
Yeah.
what would, I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious, like, what would you say to them as to how to actually take one baby step towards
Yeah.
doing that?
Yeah. I think um if you're a reader, start reading, reading, all the self-help kind of
Yeah.
books, right? Because there's so many great suggestions and read them not to copy them, but to find little nuggets. You
Yeah.
might find, there's some great productivity books out there that I hate. Like that doesn't work for me. But I can always find one or two little
Sure.
nuggets, right?
Yeah.
So I think reading or listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, any of that where you're exposing yourself to new ideas.
Yeah.
And then, I think what something that's really helped me is journaling. Journaling is really, because as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, there's the awareness, right? That
Yeah.
works for me. This other thing doesn't, right?
Right.
Like so I think journaling is really helpful. And honestly, being patient. If, I
Yeah.
know I have a long way to go, right? Like it's kind of new for me. It has not happened overnight. So being patient sometimes, it's just going to take a bit you know,
I love
and
that.
not judging yourself when you slip back into that old mode of
Yeah.
criticizing
I
yourself
love
or
that.
judging yourself.
I'm going to add a couple more to that.
Please.
So I do like the self-help, but I would say change can't come in a vacuum. You
Yes. Good
need,
point.
whether it's
Mhm.
group coaching, one-on-one
Yeah.
coaching,
Yeah.
right? Like I talked to somebody recently where um she's not ready to take that next step to actually invest in herself, but she reads a lot of books. And I'm like, that's only going to
Mhm.
get you to so far,
It's
right?
like what we talked about. You can learn all the strategies, right?
Right.
But until you are implementing them, until you are working with, like you're saying, working with someone to make change happen in your
Right.
life.
And,
Yeah.
I used to do date and relationship coaching for a
Mhm.
matchmaking company. And I had a client once who had done a bunch of work on herself. And then she said, I need to now be in relationship so I can actually do the next level of work. Because
Um,
when you're by yourself, right, you haven't done work until your coach triggers you and you want to tell her to fuck off and fire
yeah,
her, right?
yeah.
Like to me, when my clients want to tell me to fuck off and want to fire me, then I know I've done my job, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Because
Yep.
reading a book is beautiful and we've all
Yeah.
done it, but you
Mhm.
have to be in relationship and
Yeah.
also be like I have a group coaching program and I think you have a group
Mhm.
too, and being in the group environment helps people see that they're not alone, and then you
Yes.
hear how other people are
Yeah.
showing up. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
read the books, but also
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
community, whether
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one-on-one or group or
Yeah.
something, even if it's just
Yeah.
a weekend retreat, but doing
Yeah.
something with others that
Mhm.
helps you actually self-reflect.
You are spot on. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you added that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing too, I think it's the awareness of our inner voice.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My inner critic was so sneaky. I didn't even like, I'm a coach. And that, when I was in coach, I've been a coach for, I don't know, 12 years. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't understand this gremlin thing people are talking about because I don't have one of those. Because mine was, the fact is, I can't lose the last weight. The fact is, blah, 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 blah. Like everything was so true to me until I realized it was just my inner voice was so slick
Yeah.
that it was making it true. Right, going back to the reality piece,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And paying attention to your voice, words are spells. When you're saying I should or I need to, right? That is from a place of lack and scarcity. But when you say I want to or I choose to, you now have power to make the change.
Yeah.
But if you're shoulding all over yourself, it ain't happening.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%
So,
agree. Yeah.
well, I feel like we could continue
I
talking
would
for hours,
absolutely.
but
Yes.
so Barb has a free Facebook group, and we're going to put all of Barb's contact information in the show notes. But tell them a little bit about joining the group. What happens in the group? What will they get from that group?
So the group is called, and I'm reading it because it's a crazy long name. I don't know why I did that. Finding Focus is the name. Finding Focus, Time Strategies for Scattered but Ambitious Minds.
Love that.
And basically right now, this Facebook group, I'm posting different prompts, different questions, different resources to get people to start thinking, right? Like, what is my intention this week? What is best for me to focus this week, right? And I share a bunch of tips and strategies and, through posts and videos. My goal with this group throughout the next year is to do more Facebook Live interactions, to do some, kind of book discussions, offer that. And even so I have ideas for like challenges or competitions, to help people in that way as well. So it's evolving, it's growing.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. So we'll put that link in the show notes so people can join.
Perfect.
So at the end of every podcast interview, I have you choose cards. I already picked the cards.
Right.
Today we're with the Magic of Unicorn deck.
Ooh,
Love this deck. So I have 3 cards in front of me. One is left, one is center, and one is right. So I'm going to let you choose.
I'll go with left.
I knew that's the one you were going to go with. And I have to say, often I don't look at these cards before but so often they match the theme of the conversation that I have.
Of course.
So this one here is Refreshing Oasis. Nurture yourself, gather your strength.
Ooh, I love that.
Right. And we're, in order to gather your strength, you do have to nurture yourself, right? In order to do a lot of what we're talking about is that self-care. If you chose the middle card, the card is Magical Crystal Cave. Switch on your inner light. Bring forward your gifts.
Ooh.
Right.
Beautiful.
And if you chose the right card, this is the Stargate of Lyra, I don't know. Expand your causal chakra, enter the unicorn kingdom. So that's really about your connection to spirit, right? Like look at, for those of you that are listening and not on YouTube, this is a beautiful card. Go to the YouTube and just see it.
It is.
Barb, thank you so much for this conversation today. This was a beautiful conversation, and I so always appreciate when you and I get to spend time together and chat.
Me as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. And for those of you listening, thank you for being here today on this journey towards a more enlightened and fulfilling life. I hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace your inner wisdom and navigate your path with a renewed sense of purpose. Remember, transformation begins from within. Take a moment each day to connect with your higher self and trust that the universe is guiding you towards your highest good. If you found value in today's episode, please download it, subscribe, leave a review, do all the things, and share this podcast with anyone who you might think will benefit from our message. Your support helps us to reach more souls on their spiritual journey. Stay connected with our community on social media. The links will all be in the show notes. You can visit my website at Forever Change Coaching for additional resources, upcoming events, and more ways to stay inspired. You can also receive a resource to check out if you're ready for a big ass up level. When you go to my website, you'll get some journal prompts that will help you kind of figure out where you're at. And until next time, continue to shine your light, walk in peace and love. I am Francine Tirrell, and this has been Effin' Fridays with Francine. Barb, thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.